Good evening, Dynasty Junkies. It is episode 139 of the Dynasty Junkies, part of the DAP network. Tonight, you've got Scott Sidlow rolling here. That's the voice you're hearing right now. If you don't know that by now, well, maybe you're a new listener. And if that's the case, welcome. We love to have you. With me, Andrew Hall. Mr. Andrew Hall. What's going on, brother?
I'm doing great, Mr. Scott Sidlow. Glad to be with you and talk some more rookies before we get to the draft up here in a couple weeks.
Excellent. We have a returning guest tonight, a man that I knew little about this time a year ago, but Andrew brought him on, and we were just kind of broing out here, and we've got some good vibes going on, and we're like, man, just got to get this dude back because he's got some good stuff. Mr. David Zock at David Zock 16 and the Fantasy Z Score. David, what's going on, man? Why don't you introduce yourself, tell the people where they can find you and what you do.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me on again. I remember our last show too, and it was a lot of fun chatting up with you guys and all your high stakes leagues and your mass entries and stuff like that. So yeah, I do work with some fantasy pros. I do rankings there. I do work with Dynasty Nerds. That's where you'll find my Fantasy Z Score, which is my rookie, wide receiver, and running back models that is competing with some of the best in the industry, I like to think, and have kind of proven it out through some competitions that I've ran on Twitter. So if you guys ever find out anyone else who needs to be in that competition, let me know, and I'll get them on there with their models. So
awesome. I love it. Yeah, it's it's done pretty well so far anyway, at least for as long as I've been following it. So I'm excited to get into some of those names tonight. Obviously we did a whole show on quarterbacks and running backs, a little bit on receivers. Tonight we'll kind of do a catch-all. We'll get into some more receivers. We'll get a few running backs from the Z Score model, and then we'll grab some tight ends too. But first I wanted to, Daniel Snyder, what do you buy it for? 800 something million in 1999, and now 6 billion. So look at that
Craziness.
So I'm wondering, here in Chicagoland, we have quite a track record of absolutely trash organizations and owners, and then all of a sudden, they sell and they become amazing. Cubs, Blackhawks, in 3 to 5 years, the Chicago Bears. And so in that case, are you guys thinking that Washington might actually, this new group coming in, I believe it's the owners own the 76ers, if that's correct. Josh Harris, is it? Andrew, what do you think? Is this going to help Washington? Are they going to be in kind of the tank for Caleb Williams, and then all of a sudden, new stadium and new organization and new times, and they're going to be relevant again?
Well, it sure can't hurt, right? I mean, they weren't necessarily the greatest team on earth before this. I think the off the field antics of, Snyder and the other, front office people and all the drama that's gone on there the last few years, I feel like a reset's probably great for the team, for the franchise. Getting a fresh face in there and some fresh ideas, again, can't be a bad thing. I am very interested to see what they do this year. I kind of want to see how much they want to go with this, and if they really want to go full tank, or if they try to kind of, limp along and go, 8-9 and just kind of do a bad tank, right? I mean, I could see that happening too, because it's just 1 year. But they do have Eric Bieniemy on offense now. And I'm wondering if that's kind of like a sign of things to come, is that they are trying to go outside the box. We're going to have to see what that team looks like, right? I mean, we don't quite know what it's even going to be. Is it Robinson or Gibson? Are they drafting someone else? You got McLaurin and Dotson, but I'm not sold on the QB position there. Like, I don't think Heineke's the answer. Are they going to be drafting someone? Like, it's just so many questions. I don't really know what to do with them, to be honest.
David, what do you think? Are they gonna tank for Caleb Williams or what?
No, you got a lot of people that got their jobs on the line this year, I think, with, like you said, Eric Bieniemy and Ron Rivera. I think his leash is about ended, right? As far as, it's new ownership and stuff like that, so maybe they extend it. But no, I think those guys really are coaching for their jobs, and I'm excited to see how Bieniemy makes his stamp on the team. Like, is he gonna use Gibson to his full strengths? Is he gonna be putting Curtis Samuel in sweeps and stuff like that? And of course, highlighting their best receivers. But that quarterback situation is a problem. Heineke's at Atlanta now, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So they got Sam Howell.
That's who I
they're
meant. Yeah.
That's who
They
they're
do.
rolling with.
Same
and
difference.
H's. Yeah.
I don't know if they're gonna trade up. Oh yeah, Jacoby Brissett. Someone said.
Oh,
Oh,
there you
Toronto
go.
Dave's in here too.
Yeah, thank
that's
you.
cool.
Puff pass with the Jacoby Brissett reset. I like that. That's a good point. that exactly says it, right? We don't even know who the quarterback is. That's how bad it is.
Right.
Like it doesn't even matter. Like I did say Heineke because I was just thinking about him in another league, but it's Howell, who I actually have some shares of, but I'm still not expecting much.
No, I mean it's hard to, right? Like, he's later round pick, and they got a lot of pieces around him, I guess. It's a pretty high powered offense if you plug in just any average quarterback, right? Like, Heineke did pretty well and made
That's
McLaurin
true.
sustainable, Dotson really good for a rookie.
Yeah.
Samuel started out real hot, and yeah, that running back room is gonna be really interesting. I'm grabbing some of both just in case they pop off here, but
That's right.
it's nerve wracking for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Pretty much other news. I don't know. Saquon Barkley's holding out. Does that mean there's a buy window there, or I don't know. Everybody's worried he's getting old now. He's like 25, so 25 is the new 30 for running backs. So
God,
I
I feel ancient. This is great. I love it.
Yeah, I picked up a few shares over the last couple. I guess maybe over the last 6 months, but I think the only one I sold was where I picked up a Breece Hall share, so I wasn't mad about that. Basically, just a swap for a non-competing team for a competing team going for the title. So he got Barkley, I got Hall, and we move forward. But
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. Where are you guys at on Barkley then? Does this give you any opportunity for a buy window, or you don't think anybody's going to fall for that?
I'm not sure people
I'll
are
jump
going to
in, I
fall
guess,
for
quickly
it.
and just say.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I think I'm a little delayed.
I was just going to say, I don't
here,
think that it's April. Me too. It's April, so like, who knows, right? Like, I don't know how much I really worry about running backs holding out in April. He's relatively veteran at this point. He doesn't need the extra workouts, so I'm not really that worried about it. But yeah, if somebody's panicking, or I don't know, send an offer that's a little low, which is kind of my MO, as we've talked about. The puff pass came up last time, right? Where it's like the low ball haul. That's me, right? Like, send a low ball offer for Barkley, and you never know. Maybe you can get something done. So that's probably what I would do if you really need a running back, but I don't know. I'm not too worried about it.
Right. Same feelings there. I haven't even tried to shop for him. I haven't seen any trades with him go down at all. People who have him in my leagues are very high on him, as they should be. Running backs becoming a very rare commodity these days, and how they're being valued. So if you got a top 5 one, they're holding it very, very close to their chest.
Very true. All right. Well, let's actually, I want to mention a couple of things. So we'll get into the rookie talk here. Wide receivers. When we talked last week, we had the March ADP from DLF, and already with the April ADP, there's some changes, which is always kind of funny, right? Because we don't have anything new, no new draft capital, nothing like that. But yet you have what was it? I think probably 3 or 4 guys moved multiple spots. Cedric Tillman being one, he moved up, from 10 to 7. A couple names there moving in, moving around. But I always find that interesting with essentially no changes, that players are just moving up and down, right? But David, I want to come to you first. And before we go a little bit deeper, we talked about a lot of these names last week. But out of that top 12 group there, is there maybe, why don't we do this? Give me one name on that list that you're higher on with your Z score, and maybe one that you're lower on out of those top 12.
Okay. Well, I talk about him a lot, so I don't know if I want to pick him again, but Quentin Johnston is definitely one. He's still vying for the wide receiver 1 spot of the class for me. And
right.
I've had some terrible luck with my top values at the top end of drafts lately. I don't know if you guys saw a tweet, but Rashad Bateman was kind of my guy the one year. I had him very high, and then he goes to a low volume offense, gets injured a couple times. Same deal this last year. It's extremely frustrating because you can see the talent there, his explosive plays, and you just think if he was in just a normal offense and wasn't hurt, that he'd be going off right now. And then you get Burks, who goes to this another, probably the second lowest pass volume team, and fights through injuries again. And I just can't catch a break with my top values here. So this is the year that they're all going to come together. But Johnson got mocked to the Ravens and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh God, don't do it to me again. But his profile's very, very attractive for me. So he led his team in receiving every single year that he was there, starting from a freshman, sophomore, junior, early declare. He's got top 3 in pretty much every metric we're looking at: yards per routes run, adjusted yard or average yards per team pass attempt, adjusted for SRS, which is kind of a team strength for college. There's just not much that he can't do. His film grades from NFL.com, Scouts Inc. I know the nerd score is coming out soon, and they weren't talking too highly of him, so that might be the one film score that he gets dinged in a little bit. And he has, a good body type for it, like 33 and 5/8 inch arms. That's monstrous, and big hands to go with it. And I know he doesn't play the high catch point, is what all the film guys tell me, but
right.
He still pops off in the model because of that. Like, the physical metrics is a very small part of it, but all those other things, he looks amazing to me from an analytical standpoint. And one guy I'm lower on, let's see, it's got to be Zay Flowers. So 2 years ago, I introduced a scaling factor for the level of competition you're at, both internal at the team, and I measure that through SRS at Sports Reference. It kind of measures the strength of a team overall and their strength of schedule. And Zay Flowers is absurdly low in both of those. So while he has good metrics, like if you just look at him naked, so to speak, they look good. But if you adjust for his team strength, they become not attractive. And then you throw his size in there and how he's tiny, which doesn't normally affect me. And like I said, it's a small factor, but it still factors a little bit. The team adjustment is what really kills him. But I like to tell people with the small school guys like that, they have untapped upside. So he does have that going for him. But as far as me drafting him at top 4 prices, he goes top 3 in some cases. I'm probably going to have 0 shares of him from a dynasty standpoint.
So April showers are not bringing Zay Flowers for David.
I love it.
Got it. Okay.
No, not for me. How about you guys?
Very interesting. I want to bring this up, Andrew, before we go to you, because as you both well know, because I don't shut up about it, I had my pre-NFL draft, rookie draft, last Thursday is when it started. And we briefly mentioned it last week because I had the 106 and I took JSN with that pick. We've since completed the draft. So I will compare here. Quentin Johnston went 111 and Zay Flowers went 112. So obviously we know where David stands on that. One of them is going to be a great value and one of them maybe not. If we look at our DLF ADP, Superflex ADP, Quentin Johnston's average is 9.3, so the 109, and Flowers right behind him, 9.4, right? So again, the 109 there, leaning the 109. So I think that's an easy answer for David, which spot he's going. However, I will ask you this: are you willing to? Would you take Johnson as high as the 106, for example, the position I was in last week where the top 3 quarterbacks went, and obviously Bijan and Gibbs. And so I took the first receiver, which was JSN. Are you still in the boat of, hey, because it's a pre-draft, I'm going to take the safe guy JSN, or are we going to say, obviously we don't have draft capital, so that's the only standpoint we can speak from here. Does that make sense to you, or are you very much willing to take Johnson at much earlier than the 103 that he's currently, or 109 that he's currently at?
So I would have been up for taking Johnson like about a month ago, but with draft capital kind of solidifying a little bit, it looks like JSN is going to go higher than he was originally predicted. So with that in mind, he's the safe floor pick. And if I'm playing it safe, which I typically do with a high end pick, it's probably going to be JSN. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hate it if you took Johnston there. It would definitely be on my mind. But yeah, we'll see landing spots and draft capital. I got some bets about him going in the first round and stuff going on. So I got a lot riding on him already, and I haven't even drafted a rookie draft yet. But
I love it.
I think you made the right play there. So.
I love it. All right, Andrew, let's bring you in here. Thoughts on Johnston and Flowers, and anything else you want to add in on those top 12?
I think it's interesting to see that both Johnston and Flowers are lower overall. Like you were talking about the 9.3 and 9.4 in April. Johnston was 8.8, and then Flowers was 12.4. So there were a big gap in March, and now they're right up against each other. So, and they both are lower in theory. So we've had some running backs, I'm assuming, or maybe Hendon Hooker is, jumping ahead of them in theory. Maybe another quarterback. I'm guessing it's running backs. But the point I'm getting at with that is, Quentin Johnson is pretty much been my third in this draft class for the last 2 months or so. And we said at the beginning, there's really nothing that's changed. Like I haven't, we don't have any new data points to look at, right? Like I don't know why we would be moving things, but there is always, draft hubbub, and you hear the rumor mills, and like so-and-so is moving, looking to make a so-and-so and the so-and-so. Like that's all they got, right? So for me, I don't mind at all taking Quentin Johnson at the 109. I think that's actually a pretty fair spot. That's probably where I'm going to lean on him. Him and Addison are both right there for me in that 8-9 kind of range. I just think it's interesting to look at the relative athletic score. RAS is something I like, especially for bigger bodied players. And I didn't really realize this, but JSN and Quentin Johnson both ran the same 40, which is, I mean, it's in 4.52. I mean, like that's interesting. Like Johnson is significantly larger. And so you get a bigger bodied guy like that who can move just as fast as the, smaller slot receiver in JSN. For fantasy, that could be a game changer. That could be something, like a DK Metcalf in a sense. I don't want to put too much of a comp on him. I'm not calling him DK Metcalf, but one of those guys is just a physical freak that can get open downfield and, make plays out of nothing. And I just think that Johnston has that upside. I will agree with David, though. I think you made the right pick going JSN at 106. Safe floor. That's kind of the consensus there. I think you're more likely to get JSN traded away for Johnston plus a second than the opposite. And so I always draft for value and trade for need. And I think the value is higher on Jackson Smith and Jigba right now. But yeah, that could all change here in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from tonight is the draft. And we could see some very wild things happen that change a lot of this, Let's say, heaven forbid, let's say they go one draft slot apart, right, where JSN goes and then right after him, Quentin Johnson. What do you do now? You know what I mean? Like their draft capital is basically the same. Like, oh my God, like that could throw a wrench in this. So I'm just excited for the chaos, as we're talking about with DJ3 Chat. Chaos. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you this, David, the last question here on these top guys. So I want to know what your model says about, Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman. They played in kind of that, wide of the hashes offense, something that's really a purely college offense. Some people will say Hyatt is a one-trick pony, but that one trick is phenomenal, right? Yeah. Like that speed and that, I mean, man, he can just, what do the numbers, what does your model tell you about those two players? And do you factor in, I know you factor in the team competition and things like that and some of your metrics, but does it factor in that type of offense where they're playing in something where basically Hyatt was schemed open on every, I mean, the guy, like, watch his highlights, he's wide open on every play. Like what do you glean from that? I mean, I don't know.
So I can't filter out stuff like that, like that essentially tricks the model, so to speak. Yeah. So their team looks strong, their stats are phenomenal. So Jalen Hyatt is my wide receiver 4 right now, and Tillman's my wide receiver 6. So I'm high on both of them. I know what you're saying. I've seen those clips, the broken coverages. You put a guy in motion and he just runs a fly on the slot and he's wide open. Yeah, it looks like the easiest thing on earth to execute as far from a receiver standpoint. Run in a straight line, catch the ball, and you didn't have to do anything else.
Right.
But so it really likes them. I haven't seen every play. I do know that the film grades on them. So this is where I lean into the film grades. So I don't watch plays like you guys do for the most parts. I hardly even watch a play of college football, to be honest. But
it's actually awesome because we know like we know exactly where you stand. So that's what makes it so interesting. So I love this. This is great.
Yeah, at least I have no bias coming
Right.
in, is what
Right.
I think. But
No, I know that's awesome.
so yeah, there's some film grades on the guys, and they're very high, especially Lance Zierlein with NFL.com. He has,
He's very high
I mean,
on
it
Hyatt.
still looks like Hyatt's his wide receiver 1 from a
Yeah,
film
I think it
standpoint,
is.
which I have a hard time to believe that from what I'm seeing in in the metrics and the other film guys in the industry. So that's hard to believe. And then he's also very high on Tillman. And you see mock drafts and stuff like that. I saw Tillman going to the Chiefs at 31, and I got some sick exposure to him in some underdog drafts. So that would make my day there. But yeah, so to your point though, it does essentially trick the model in that respect. But I don't know that. I'm playing dumb to it. I see the film grades, they're good. I see the stats, they're good. So I'm like, maybe they are, but everyone else thinks they're good. Their stats say they're good, so I'm gonna roll with it. Those guys are top targets of mine.
Just to jump in on that for a second, though, I think it kind of tricks the film grade too, if I'm being honest. Because whenever I watch Jalen Hyatt, I feel like every play is a highlight reel, right? So it just makes his separation look crazy. It makes the points and the stats and all those numbers and the metrics that you're talking about look even better on the film because there's just no one around him, right? And I worry that doesn't translate to the NFL. I worry that as fast as you are, they're going to scheme some solution. They're going to have a safety over the top. They're going to figure out a way to stop that. They're going to check you with the line, and the guy's bigger than the guys they were in college. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like he's one of those kind of one-trick ponies in a way. Not that that's a negative, but it's just something to keep in mind. It's one of the many data points that I think you need to have. I think he could easily be one of those, not second round. I guess he's probably going in the first in most drafts, but even like an early second round breaking the draft and, huge, terrific pick that we see in a year and just go, how did you get in that late? But again, on the flip side, it could be, well, he was a one trick pony who pulled his hamstring and we never got to see it. Right. I mean, like, it's just, if you only have one trick, we've seen that happen in the NFL time after time where someone's got all the talent. They just can't put it on the field. And I kind of worry with him being, I don't know, so easily open in college. It's like, well, does he have the tool set to really do that at the pro level? I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, I haven't seen a ton of film on him, but I'm just nervous.
You mentioned incorporating that into the data. How do you incorporate something like that into a spreadsheet, let's say?
Man, just put an asterisk by it and move on. You know what I mean? Just like, that's literally like, that's probably what I would do. Like color it yellow and be like question marks. I don't know.
I genuinely look for ways to include every single thing possible. And that's something like that. I don't even know where to start to put a number to it. How do you degrade it or
well, again, even if you
I can't even think about how to do it.
Well, even if you could find a metric, how do you quantify it? Right. Like, let's say there was some sort of a number where it's like, the team is ahead by so many points, or the distance is so great. It flatlined, like the algorithm just says, okay, no more. This is the most you can get. And then how do you quantify that? And like, there's so many rabbit holes you can fall down with that. And it's just impossible. So largely, I feel like, and this is part of what makes this game so fun, is that there is no right answer. Right? Like, as much as you're trying to get the Z-score to be perfect, I totally admire that. I'm more on the mindset of nothing is perfect. Well, that means everything's perfect. You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, then we're all in this together. We're all doing our best to guess future outcomes of human events. What a crazy idea! Like, who would do this? We do this. That's our whole fun. So yeah,
it's a lot of fun. Yeah,
it's enjoyable, especially when you're right.
Yeah.
David. Okay, so basically, getting into this next group here of 12, and you can kind of work with the bottom half too of the top 12, but the next 13 to 24, a lot of names that are kind of all over the board, film grades and otherwise. This seems to be a class of a lot of smaller, the slot style players and everything, and I know you account for that a little bit. Are there any names in there? Let's just kind of do the same thing. Is there a name that jumps out at you in that next group that you're like, yeah, this guy is, obviously, again, we don't have draft capital, but your model says, hey, this guy's got a real shot to be something, and then the other way around as well.
Yeah, I'd say there's two guys that pop there with A.T. Perry and Tank Dell. Both of them, very different style players.
Yeah.
Like A.T. Perry's an X-type guy. Tank Dell's kind of that Tutu Atwell mold. So his is scary close to Tutu Atwell. Just a tiny guy with really nice production. Yeah. So that scares me off because I was a Tutu Atwell champion in the 3rd round of rookie drafts. I mean, it didn't burn me too bad, but
Hey, the Rams took him pretty freaking early,
Right. So he got the draft capital to go with that
yeah.
production. You start to get excited, like maybe they're going to use him, and he's made some splash plays.
I mean,
here
they still might. I mean, it's
and he was
the
hurt
world
that
is if he
rookie
doesn't
year.
do anything as a rookie, he's dead. But we know that there's still a few guys might do something. Like, let's be honest.
Right. No, that's a point I want to emphasize too, though. So like I use per game stats in my college stats, and I would say 95% of people who are analyzing data out there don't use per game stats, and I think it's really important. They'll say the season long, has better correlation to future output, but I just can't believe that. Like, they're very close to me. I know it's a hair better using the season average. Like when you look at those charts from Dynasty Nerds where you see the line going up and all the dots of success, right? Yeah. For each year. So like you look at Cedric Tillman, his last year's way down here because he only played 3 or 4 games.
Right, he got hurt.
So so I go in and do the per game of each one. I think that gives good context to people like that. And people just think injured bad all the time. And I like to see past that. And it really frustrates me. Yeah, it's irritating. So then like when my guys get hurt, that are my guys that, you've seen them flash, you've seen what they can do, and then they get hurt and they suck now. It's like, that's all it is. It's like, well, do they? They're just unlucky, man.
Yeah. So for A.T. Perry and Tank Dell, are you looking for a particular draft capital that would boost them up to the point where you're like, at this point, they're essentially late 4th round picks in ADP. So, pretty much the end of everyone drafts, final dart throws. But is there draft capital that you would say, okay, I'm willing to take this guy in, 2nd round or something like that? Is that even possible? Can draft capital move them that far? Or would it have to be, some other factor that would do that?
They would have to go either, late 2nd round of the real NFL draft or early 3rd. But as long as they go, in the 4th round or earlier, I'm going to be okay with them as a, 3rd or 4th round rookie target.
Okay.
But yeah, they pop in different ways, right? Like A.T. Perry's got good film grades, and he had pretty decent close to his career, and I know he's a late declare, and people really shy away from that. But I saw an interview that Brett Coleman did with him, and he was talking through his game, and that kid's he's so smart. The way he talks about the game, it's just amazing. I love the way he breaks it all down, and Coleman was in love with him too, and that was really fun to see. So I enjoy rooting for players that are good guys, or so to speak. So it was fun seeing that.
Yeah, no doubt. Brett Coleman, check him out on YouTube too. He has a ton of film breakdowns. Just an absolute ton.
I always learn something when I watch one of his shows. It's amazing.
I want to ask you about Michael Wilson, who's a guy that is very well liked by Matt Waldman and some of the others that are purely film guys. Does he have any stats that are anywhere of like relevancy in your model?
No, I keep seeing his mock draft capital so high, and I look at his profile, and
you're like,
just
who is this
disgusting. Like, there's not a single thing to like that I can find. And like I said, I even use per game stats and stuff like that, and I'm just seeing a sea of red. So I conditionally format a Excel spreadsheet, and you look at all his stats, and it's just dark red or light red everywhere. So I don't know what the hype is about him. Is it? You said it's film grades that people are?
Yeah, his route running, his release. He just has several ways to win, to get open. I can see it. I get it. But I mean, I honestly didn't even know who he was until maybe 2 months ago. So that probably tells you something. But however, this might be not something you can answer off the top of your head, but can you think of a guy maybe in the last couple of classes that was the same scenario where it's like, hey, I keep seeing this name kind of pop up, but he's not anywhere of, he's not relevant at all in my model, but he ended up being decent or at least usable in fantasy?
Terry McLaurin jumps out at me right away. His profile was just
nothing.
Just awful. I don't.
Nothing. Yeah.
Trying to look for a good thing in it right now, and I guess his yards per route run adjusted for team strength was the only semblance of hope in there, and then his film score was okay. So,
yeah, it wasn't even
not much. Not
even the
else
nerds of Ohio State lore loved him, and it's
the
like
Ohio State.
Yeah, well, sorry, we don't say that here.
Fair.
But yeah, so I find that interesting. Any other names in that group that you're just like you can't figure out why they would even be considered? Kind of like a Michael Wilson, just from
Yeah, I think Trey Palmer is a guy I'm super low on. Let me check
that was going to be the next name I was going to ask. Okay.
Let's see where he is.
I think he was a transfer to Nebraska. I'm in a league with a guy who lives down there, and he loves him. So.
He's sitting right next to Michael Wilson in my model, though. But
is he
4.3 340? He's a speed demon guy, right? He's one of those.
He's very fast.
Yeah.
Very
so
fast.
What was his 40?
4.33.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's plenty of speed guys out there. Oh yeah, I see that now. 4.33.
Yeah.
He's the fastest guy in class.
Yep.
I believe so. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, that's exciting.
There
you go. That's his. That's his reason.
That's why the name gets mentioned, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, if you can't do something with that speed, I think it would have shown up more in the production metric, is what I always say to people who throw athletic scores for a guy that I'm a little low on. And, you always have to have a reason to like someone. So if that's what you like about a player, if he wins with speed and you can see he wins with speed, then by all means go for it. You have to, in these later rounds, you have to pick something that stands out, and a 4.33 stands out. So when you're in the late round, so just find anything that stands out and cling to it in the last round. So that's how I find a lot of sleepers.
Third, fourth round. I mean, that's what it's all about. You're not finding guys that are going to win 4 different ways. Otherwise, they wouldn't be third or fourth round rookie picks, right? So, that makes perfect sense. I want to ask you about a guy, and then Andrew, if there's anybody you want to throw out. But Raheem Jarrett is a dude that's just like dirty. I love him. He's a dog, man. He played at Maryland. I think, did Travis May mention last week? I can't remember if it was on this podcast or one of the other 500 he's done in the last week, about him just having a crappy quarterback who's way overrated and still just being like a backyard baller. Raheem Jarrett, does he have any redeeming qualities in the Z-score model?
I'm looking through it right now. I'm trying to find something that pops.
Nothing that's not dark red.
Well, his market share and dominators are all right, but they get dinged when adjusted for the lower end team strength a little bit. Okay. But those are okay, really. What really stands out is his yards per out run is the second lowest in class, so that's concerning.
Wow.
I don't know context on them at all. Like I plug a lot of these guys in, and if I don't study them specifically to know why, their stats are this way, I don't know. Like a lot of the top 20 wide receivers or whatever, I'll know. I guess he's number 18 or something like that. You have in there?
Yeah,
number 15.
15. Yeah.
So I don't have a lot of context to share other than what I got in my database.
Oh, so. Yeah, that's perfect. That's all we're looking for. I mean, you got to find something and see if maybe there's a hit, maybe not. Andrew, you want to jump in on anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of piggyback on a lot of this. I don't put nearly the work that David does. I don't have a model. I don't have that kind of time, right? It's just not my thing. I love people that do, and I'm really glad that you're on to tell us some of these things. But like I said before, there is no wrong answer. I do want to clarify something too, though. All of these players are better at this sport than I ever will be. So it's weird to talk badly about some of these guys, and I'm just like, a 40-year-old dude who doesn't play football at all. So let's just be clear. That aside,
I played wide receiver, so you can.
Yeah, but not anymore.
No.
Unless you're running between cars on the highway, changing that tire,
chasing your 3-year-old. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say though is like everybody's got something, right? And that's kind of what you said too, David. Is you find something that breaks the tie, right? Because all of these guys, from even wide receiver 13 in ADP, all the way down through wide receiver 23, are all 4th round flyers. Like you're just hoping to get lucky at the end of the draft. And so if you have something that breaks the tie, whatever you like, whether it's speed or film score or you really like Brett Coleman. You're like, he likes this guy. Like, go in with your gut. I mean, I think there's no wrong picks in the 4th round of a rookie draft. Because again, if it ends up being not a great pick, okay, we move on, right? It doesn't matter. But I love finding some of those diamonds in the rough, right? And a lot of times too, especially when it comes to this current NFL that we're in, physicality is important. And I really like looking at the metrics for that. Relative athletic score is something I use a lot to try to help break a tie. And so for instance, Raheem Jarrett, Michael Wilson, both coming up over 8.4. I mean, Michael Wilson's a 9.5 in relative athletic score. I mean, so he's a freak of nature in that regard. And that's something that could break a tie. But on the flip side of that, Tank Dell was like a 5.6 or something, like not terrific. Trey Palmer, not terrific. Like some of these guys, maybe that's what it takes, is just some reason to say no thanks. And I don't think there's a wrong way about it, but I love seeing some of these names pop in different places and then just kind of put it all together and say, well, I'll do my best. Here's what we got. Because again, that's part of the fun of this, is hitting on a guy in the 4th round, like hitting on an Isaiah Pacheco or hitting on a Chigo Conquo. I'm just going to shorten it because it's what we do now. But like, I got him at like 5.12 in one Dynasty rookie draft, the last pick of the 5th round, which was nuts, so that's the fun of this, is just go with your heart, go with your gut. Don't go with your brain. As counterintuitive as that is to David's whole model, it's just like,
no, some people are tremendous of just having a feel for a player, and just they can watch him a couple times and they just know. And my God, hats off to those guys. That's an incredible talent. And something that I don't even think NFL scouts can do in that short amount of time. And we're playing fantasy, and people are just scouting at their computers and like, that guy looks good, and then they hit. Like,
well, stakes are much lower, right?
Yeah, slightly.
My $30 fantasy league is not nearly the same as someone's whole career. So like,
we don't get fired when we're wrong.
Exactly. Yeah.
With that, I want to wrap up wide receivers here, but David, I did want to ask you if there's let me ask you 2 questions. Number 1, is there any name anywhere, not even on this list, is there somebody you want to mention that you really like better than average, or the opposite, if you feel like, hey, there's somebody here? And I'll follow that up with, like, even to say, hey, I'm going to try not to leave a draft without this guy, or I'm going to avoid him at all costs, regardless of draft capital, right? You could take that either way.
Yeah, that's a tough one just to think off the hip on that guy. Let's see. I guess Andre, however you say his last name, is a little exciting. So when I shoot for upside on a late round guy, I like to target those small school guys. So for the same reason, I'm shitting on Zay Flowers earlier because of his high expected capital. Those are the guys I'm kind of targeting late, because you don't know, they have untapped ceilings. Like, if they play at a bigger school, what have they produced, or was it just they were in this area because their family was there, or they're dedicated to a coach there, or something like that. There's a multitude of reasons that we can't calculate unless you know a person, of why they stayed where they did, or like Jordan Addison transferring to USC, was it for more playing time, or just was it to pop more to get more scouts on him? And it's hard to know the why. Yeah, right. Yep. It's hard to always know the full why behind that. So small school guys kind of have that catch my eye in the later round. So I like him, and like you said, is RAS, even though I don't do any athletic testing carrying in my model. I do physical measurements. I don't do athletic testing. I have it in there. I keep tracking it year after year, hoping to use it, but it just hasn't stuck out for me in a meaningful way yet. I know a lot of people do like that RAS though, and it intuitively makes sense. You get a big freak athlete, like they're probably going to be better than the guy who's rating a 4 or 5. So.
Well, I like that it's relative too. Like, it kind of changes with each new data point, which kind of keeps it so, like, it levels itself out, as opposed to being like,
it's a way to compare players across different. Yeah. So I like that. It does seem to have a bigger impact on tight ends than other positions in.
Oh, I believe that
I've seen. So
athletic measurables for running backs have the highest meaning. Tight ends are next for me as far as athleticism scores from the combine. And it sucks that players aren't doing all the all the events.
Yeah, I know.
We got this
I know.
massive database, and it keeps shrinking each year. With they're only going to run the 40 and then
People
do
opting
drills, and
out.
it's like,
Well,
that's
they'd rather not
disappointing.
do it than do it badly. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does seem to be the trend, and apparently teams don't care as much. And then you got JSN just blazing that 3-cone out there. But so that's stuff like that's fun to see, because three cone was the one that did matter the most for wide receivers, if I recall right. Especially shorter ones. For bigger ones, it didn't. I know Hayden Winks did a study separating 200 up guys and 200 below guys. 200 below guys, 3-cone matters a lot. 200 up guys, it's a 40 time and kind of high jump or broad jump, one of the two, mattered a lot more.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? Because
Yeah,
you're talking about
kind of is
separating
intuitive.
or just winning contested, maybe. So,
Right.
yeah, I guess that could make sense. All right, let's we'll kind of take a step back here. Let's go to running backs real quick. Mostly because I'm selfish and I wasn't on that show, but also because David's model covers running backs, so I want to hit on that. I think we know kind of some of the obvious names. I'm curious. I've got a few names I want to throw out, and I'll give you a list of names, and then you can just pick one that you're like, this guy might have a shot, or this guy, sucks. But essentially, Tyjae Spears, Zach Evans, Izzy Abanikanda, Evan Hall, Eric Gray, any of those guys, they all seem to kind of have champions in the industry, and they all seem to have some significant haters as well. So they have such a wide range of outcomes there. So that's why I kind of wanted to throw some names at you and see if one stuck out to you more than others as somebody you like.
So let's see. You said Spears, Gray, Abanikanda, and who else?
Zach Evans and Evan Hall.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I have a couple that stand out pretty aggressively high and low in that list. My low guy is Izzy. His tackle rate, something I get from Sports Info Solution. They have a good database for that. It's extremely low. It's like, I did a tweet on it. Guys with that low have essentially never ever hit when they're below 15% or lower. And to make it worse, his strength of schedule was pretty weak. So if you adjust broken tackle rate for strength of schedule, it gets even worse.
Oh, man.
But, you saw his athletic testing, and he blazed that, what was it, a 4.3, let's see, I got it somewhere. 4.39, did they adjust it to?
Yeah, he's fast.
Yeah.
But still, blazing fast. So, that part's really exciting. And it's the same deal with the running backs, even more so than the wide receivers, is there's specific things that really pop out about everyone, and then there's a lot of bad things about them too. So Tyjae Spears is very high in mine. He's my running back 5 right now with projected draft capital. So starting to like him, but there's a very tight race between my running back 5 and like my running back 14. They're all within 2 projected points per game of each other. Wow. So and I weigh landing spot pretty heavily, so landing spot's going to drive a lot of my ranks this year in that range. Yes, draft capital and landing spot, whereas normally that's not always the case. But like Damian Pierce was an A+ landing spot, even though I hated his profile. So you knew he'd get year 1 opportunity, but he's still always been a massive dynasty sell for me. I don't know where you guys stand on him, but
totally agree.
Okay.
Yep.
How about you, Andrew? How's your Damian Pierce love or hate?
I ask me in a month. That's honestly what I don't know. I hate to say that, but I'm definitely not acquiring Damian Pierce in fantasy right now. I'm just not sure he's the guy. But if they don't draft anyone, I want every share of Damian Pierce I can get. Right? He's probably got one of the biggest ranges of outcomes for fantasy in regards to the draft, because the Texans do have a lot of really good picks. There is an outside shot that the Texans get Stroud and Bijan and are just an entirely different team than we've ever seen, right? Or they, they get young and, who cares? They get some
and all the new coaches.
Right. That team is going to look very different, both on paper and on the field. And so it depends. I hate to say it, but I'm not telling anybody to acquire Damian Pierce unless it's for dirt cheap and you're just willing to take a risk for a second or something. But most Pierce owners or managers aren't really willing to give him up for that. So Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a cop-out answer, but I love the talent, but if someone better comes in, then it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like it's just
Right.
it's a crazy situation that he's in. So yeah, I mean, if Evans or even hell, like Izzy Abanikanda goes there, and it's not someone that's going to dominate. It's still going to take some carries that lowers the upside, which he had a ton of volume last year. If he doesn't have the volume,
Right.
I don't know if I want it. So, I mean, really, any running back to the Texans kind of makes me out, or at least lower. I don't want to say out, but down on value for Pierce. So yeah, I don't know. It's
Singletary didn't move the needle much.
well, that didn't help, right? Like, let's be honest,
Right.
like that's not a great thing. Even if they just go into season with Pierce and Singletary, I still expect Singletary to take some of the snaps. So there's already
Me
a
too.
built, like baked in downside. Like, I don't like what's the best possible outcome? It's going to be less than last year. So
Right.
his
His
value
best
already
outcome
peaked.
was last year in my
Right,
mind. I mean,
his value already peaked. I guess that's not great. Like
they were running an insane amount even when they were down, 2+ scores, and like
Lovey
you watch
Smith.
a game and you're like,
Lovey
Lovey
Smith.
Smith, what are we doing here? I know you're getting yards, but you're running the game out. Like you're solidifying a loss until the last week of the year when he wanted to throw away the first overall pick, I guess.
that was such a good out. I know Chicago fan.
Chicago.
Yeah, that was a terrific way to go out the door. I do think it's interesting too because Pierce is somebody who got a ton of hype last year during the season and is like the future running back of the Texans, and then not even 4 months, 5 months later, we're looking at it like he might be worth nothing. Like that's just the crazy cliff that we see with running backs, and opportunity is literally everything with running backs, and his opportunity is probably not going to be the same. It's going down. His value goes down. I hate to say it, but I just don't know if it ever regains unless they don't draft someone and Singletary gets hurt and like other things have to happen. I don't want that many dominoes to fall. Like I just give me the more sure thing almost every time.
Yep. No, I agree. Yeah, I was just curious. He's always an interesting case study to pick people's brains about. Let's see.
No doubt.
Among your list there, Eric Gray is another favorite. I think I'll be targeting him no matter where he gets drafted. If he goes undrafted, I'll still be targeting him as a pickup after the fact, or last round rookie draft. He's the only one with above average both athleticism score and college production in that entire range that I just listed. So he looks pretty solid. I don't know that he has a ton of upside, but like you said, if you get the right dominoes to fall, he's got good athleticism. I think he's flying tremendously under the radar for his profile.
Oh yeah, I got him at the 506 in the rookie draft. Like I was
like perfect.
Okay, yeah, sure, yeah. Oh,
in all these rookie drafts,
I'll be happy.
Yeah, all these rookie drafts, these late round running backs, I'm going to be just hammering them and trying to get as many dart throws as I can on guys I like. But yeah, Izzy was really low. Zach Evans and Sean Tucker. I know you didn't mention Sean.
I was going to ask you about him next because he's very I think, and I apologize if I'm wrong, Garrett, but I'm pretty sure Garrett Price has Sean Tucker very high.
Oh no,
yeah,
not my boy.
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty sure, and I was shocked because I mean, obviously I love Garrett. But yeah, so I'm kind of curious about him. He ended up falling, in my opinion, to 308 in this draft. And I thought that was kind of crazy considering how high some people have him. Again, definitely a name to throw on this list too, because I'm very curious from a statistical standpoint where he ended up for you.
Yeah. So I kind of feel like I already slightly won on these guys because I was really low on them coming into the year. Like I built a database, I saw them, they were way down there. I didn't even really know who they were. Like I said, I don't watch college ball. I watch numbers and the spreadsheets and stuff like that. So they were really low, and then I see them getting pumped for weeks on Twitter. I'm like, what is going on? What is so great about these guys? And like I mentioned before, I do a lot of underdog drafts, so that gives you kind of another feel along with Dynasty ADP of how people are ranking these guys, because it's pretty similar really on how they're drafted in those drafts and then how they end up being taken in rookie drafts, surprisingly. But they were going very high, like they were like running back 4, running back 5, running back 6 for the rookies off the board. I'm like, good Lord, I ain't gonna be touching these guys for nothing. And now they're finally falling to the end of drafts again, and I see Dynasty rankings are kind of bringing them back to reality a little bit. But the flaw that I have in my spreadsheet is I'm heavily reliant on final year production for running backs. a lot of other people are. My wide receiver is very different. That freshman year production means a lot to me. For running backs, I've looked at both, and everything points me to final year production. So I'm very heavy on that. Those guys, it seems like, you guys tell me, were earlier producers who have faded off in college. Does that sound right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. Or leveled off. Yeah. Maybe they came on early and then didn't necessarily improve, but they didn't go away. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much right on.
So that makes sense why they were getting that steam before. But I know some film, grades, like you mentioned, Garrett's going to have them real high, I guess. So that's concerning for where I have them. But
I just
Scouts
pulled it up.
Inc.
I don't see his film score, his nerd score on there yet. So
Yeah, Scouts Inc. have them at a 59 and a 61 out of 100. For reference, Devon A. Chain's an 82, Bijan's a 93. So they're
okay.
They're way down there for their film scores. So at least I was, after I did the analytic profile, then I do the film scores afterwards to see the difference, because there's sometimes some pretty stark differences there.
Sure.
And they had them low. I know NFL.com's a little higher on them though. So yeah, it's tough. They're all over the place for their film scores, and you don't typically see that. Like, film scores across people are generally, somewhat close. Like Lance Zierlein's on Zach Evans, he has them, in his top 5 backs, and then Scouts Inc. That he doesn't even crack top 12. So that's interesting. And now we'll see where the nerd scores release on that. But.
Right, for sure. Well, and I think Puff Pass Kick in the comments brings up a great point, where he's saying it's great to hear, someone like you that's like, hey, yeah, I didn't have these guys high, and yet I'm hearing other analysts who can't shut up about them, right? And it's like this is why you can't just blindly trust one source too, right? Like, you can have your favorite people that do things. Like, I love David's approach and the fact that he's like, no, I don't watch film. I don't watch the games. I don't know. This is numbers. I'm not influenced. I'm not biased in any way because it's just data. I absolutely love that. And then same thing the other way around with like a Matt Waldman, right? Who's like
Coleman.
He's basically just a scout. He's essentially a scout. He doesn't have a spreadsheet. He doesn't have a database or a model. He's like, listen, I'm just watching these guys. I'm using my experience. I'm looking at this, right? And we've mentioned a whole slew of names tonight of, film guys, model guys, everything in between. And that's where it's great to kind of get a cross section of that. And if you can generally find a guy that everyone likes, like, that's generally a good thing, and you can feel great about taking them. And when it's N'Keal Harry, like, hey, I guess we were all wrong, right? It is what it is. But
what does your model say about Bijan Robinson? Do you think he's still like is he a good running back?
Yeah, it has him next to Saquon as far as he's
okay.
Tremendous.
We all agree. We're good.
Yeah, 101 in every league.
Take him
super flex or not.
Flex. Yep. Correct. I love that that's kind of locked in. It's nice in a way having that done.
Oh yeah, there's some stuff you just type in right away and it just slaps you in the face. It's like, all right, that guy's amazing. So,
I want to ask you about one.
Sorry,
player
to your
that's
point, it's definitely a weakness that you have to observe about yourself. Like, if we all know what we're weak at, we can rely on others who are strong in that. So, there's
I'm
guys
weak at everything, so I rely on others for everything. It's perfect.
No, like you guys have a lot of Dynasty experience, and there's a lot of guys I follow like that too, that just know how the game works and values and drafts and positional values, how to target teammates and stuff like that too. And that's something I don't have a ton of experience in. I got 10, 12 years of Dynasty or whatever, but I don't play it as hardcore as you guys. I got my 8 leagues, and then I got my hundreds of best balls of leagues, and then I got my redrafts leagues, and then you're running a whole portfolio show over there of leagues. And so it's definitely interesting to get your guys' view, because you do kind of spread out exposure, right? And that kind of indicates confidence in players and how you try to always flip for value and stuff like that too. So yeah, it's whole point maybe is just good to acknowledge weaknesses and strengths of yourself to properly evaluate players. Sure. I think
absolutely, yeah, without a doubt. Couple last names here on running back, just because I'm curious. So like a guy like Zach Charbonnet, who I know very well because as a rookie at Michigan, he was a beast, and then basically got in the doghouse with the OC, and pretty much he was out. He transferred, and then he pops up at UCLA, and he's pretty damn good. So I'm curious from your model standpoint, did one have more influence over the others? Like, his time at Michigan versus time at UCLA, like, how do you balance that? And how do you, two completely different, you're talking pro style offense, you're talking to Chip Kelly spread offense. How do you factor that? How do you factor for that? And which one has a bigger influence?
Oh yeah, like I mentioned before, it's almost exclusively final year. Like I look at the other stuff, but it doesn't move the needle for me based on the models and studies I've run and the correlation to final points per game. I really trend to final year, and I always got to reevaluate. So it's been a solid year since I've went and run studies again just to make sure I'm using the most predictive stuff. But his early time doesn't affect me much. But with him, he's got a very solid all around profile, and his receiving prowess for a guy of that size is pretty exciting. So that's one thing I've always looked for is a heavier back who can catch and can wiggle, like I like to call it. So
for sure.
Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson, these are all guys who really popped in the models, and they ended up being really big hits for their values. So he's up there, but he obviously costs a mid-late first, so that's pretty different from those guys. And there's not a different guy typically like him other than Roshan, but he doesn't have the production to go with it. But again, there's a lot of narrative surrounding him, right? So was he stuck behind Bijan, so he didn't get to play, or there's a million other ways you can spin it, and I don't know the right answer or what it'll be, but I think Draft Capital hopefully will show us in landing spot.
Yeah, for sure. Last name I've got for you at running back is Tyon Evans, a guy I had no clue about until the RSP from Matt Waldman, and Matt Waldman absolutely loves him. Again, it's a just total film grade. So I don't know if you even have any data for him or
what was his name again?
Tyon Evans, Tyon, Tyon Evans.
Oh, I've seen the name, but he's not in my database yet.
Not in there. Yeah. So I had no idea who he was. So I found that interesting. And so I was going to say, if you have all this info on him, I'm going to go, wow, damn, I'm really an idiot. I totally lost this guy. Right. But no. Okay. Well, that's good.
I'll type his name in at least to check him out. So
yeah. All right, cool. There we go. See, I gave you some work to do. So
there you go. Yeah.
There you go.
I was slacking anyway.
You can only go so deep with your numbers, man. There's only so many rows in a spreadsheet.
For sure,
it runs out. You got to be careful. Yeah.
No, Google Sheets can go forever, man.
Oh, I was trying to help you out, David. No,
it's infinite, man. It's infinite.
I haven't hit the limit like Peter Howard yet. So
yeah, that's right.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, Peter. He was on what 3 weeks ago?
Yeah,
2 weeks ago.
Oh, he was.
That was that he is amazing. I love him, and I could listen to him forever.
Just a beautiful mind, and he can explain his stuff for hours and hours. And
but he can't spell. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's so great.
And he knows it.
It's so great. All right, let's get into tight ends here. A few things we'll touch on. I know you don't have anything in your model for tight ends, right, David? Is that correct?
I mark a couple of things like the film scores they get and a little bit of athleticism, but yeah, that's pretty much all I go off of is draft capital, film grades from guys I trust, and athleticism.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I think it's maybe not quite as much as quarterbacks, but it's kind of a crapshoot as well. I mean, sure, you get those top guys every once in a while, but otherwise, you get the Greg Dulcich who, comes out of nowhere and, right. You just never know.
Who are you guys high on for the tight ends, or who are you liking?
Yeah. Andrew, you want to start with that one?
Sure. I mean, I think Dalton Kincaid's going to be my favorite after all of this. I just think he's got the most one. Yeah, he's just got the most like pro-ready game, and I think he's big enough and he's strong enough, and gosh darn it, people like him. He's just one of those guys that I think is gonna get good draft capital. I think he just checks every box. I think Michael Mayer is probably getting a little bit overvalued. I think there's some name recognition maybe where people are really high on him. I'm not hating him. I just would rather have Kincaid in a vacuum. And again, not knowing draft capital or landing spot, that's kind of all we have. I've talked about it before, but I think Darnell Washington's one of those guys, again, as the third tight end. Darnell Washington is one of those guys that could be a stud or a dud. And it really just depends on the scheme that he's put into. I've mocked him and have been a big fan of him going to my Bengals. I think that they, with all the offensive line help that they need, adding a blocking tight end would be phenomenal to play alongside Irv Smith, who's never really healthy anyway. So it gives you a 6 offensive lineman because the dude's just so big. But if he goes to a team like the Bengals where he's going to be blocking and, 5th on the receptions, potential lead of the season, you don't want him for fantasy in that. That's just terrible. It dooms his fantasy value. He might be a stud tight end and be one of the best ever and still not be in your top 20 tight ends for fantasy because it's just how it goes. So I want to see where all 3 of those guys go. I mean, they're all top 3 tight ends for a reason. They're all right up there. In my opinion, they're all kind of in a similar tier. It just depends on where things go. The later guys, I think Tucker Kraft is someone I'm seeing a name a lot, and I really like what he could do. But again, after that, even Musgrave, Laporta, names all these guys. Not bad at all. They're all this could be one of the best tight end classes we see. But
That's
ultimately, with tight end, I think more than any other position, it really matters where they land. Like if you got a great tight end, let's say Darnell Washington goes to the Chiefs. Well, now what? You know what I mean? Like a great tight end kind of goes to waste for fantasy, and we've seen it happen before. Pitts kind of got lucky and Ingram kind of got lucky going to a spot that they needed to lean on a tight end because they didn't have anyone. So it's a tricky one for me because tight ends are asked to do so much. It's not like they just run or they just catch. They are asked to block too. And that could change their entire dynamic as a football player. So I don't know. There's no right answer for me with tight end. It's literally just whatever you feel like is value. Also, and let's not forget, tight ends generally take some time to develop. So I'm usually not drafting tight ends in my rookie draft. I'd rather pay, 50 cents on the dollar in a year when I haven't done anything and just kind of pick them up off waivers even and kind of put them in a taxi spot if I got that. But I don't really like drafting them. I'd rather draft a running back that could see the field. That's just kind of my MO.
No, that's a good point, especially scheme dependent, like you mentioned, Ingram when he went to Jacksonville. I haven't really thought about that, but that makes perfect sense. So that's a good point.
Yeah, I think.
What about you, Scott?
Sometimes for me, I'll kind of go into draft season with, kind of loose rankings and go, I think, this is my set of rankings. And then, ultimately at some point you have to select a name and hit draft. Right. And that's really where sometimes it comes down to like, one of the examples I often give is like Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson. Like, yeah, sure. I like both of them. I like their landing spots, like whatever. But I came out of draft season with like 8 shares of Justin Jefferson and 1 of Jalen Reagor. Why did that happen? I don't know. I got super lucky, I guess. But like at the end of the day, when I had to pick a name, that's the name I chose. And certainly I have plenty of examples where it didn't work out. But I think my point is that I can look at this list of tight ends and go, this is a tight end premium. It's my only weakness on this team. I should be drafting tight ends. And I look back at all the opportunities where I passed on them in this draft I just had. So, kind of like you said, Michael Mayer, he ended up going 201. And I was like, I had the 202. I traded back. Kincaid went 204. Every few picks, one of those guys jumped off the board, and, Washington and Musgrave and Zach Kuntz and Sam Laporta and Tucker Kraft and so you can just go down the list. Like, yeah, they all got drafted and they all seem to kind of fall into place at this point. But I think a couple of the main metrics for me that I've seen, obviously the RAS, I think it's got to be above 8. I'm pretty sure is the cutoff for the majority, just playing the odds. Right. Just playing the odds.
Looking at historical hits and stuff. Right.
Yeah. And just saying, okay, most of the, recent top tight end seasons came from a tight end that was 6'5" or taller and, had a RAS above 8. And so then you kind of start eliminating some of these guys. Like Sam Laporta was a guy that I really liked in college because I watch a lot of Big Ten football and I know how bad Iowa's offense was, and Laporta always seemed to be there. He always seemed to show up, and he made a catch and he made a play. And it's like, yeah, this guy's pretty good. And then you're like, well, he's kind of short. And His athletic profile is fine. It's not special, but he's kind of like maybe a, like Chigakonkwo 2.0, right? But then you're like, well, wait a minute. Okonkwo was really good last year. We really liked him. So then it's like, well, should I be in on Laporta then? So I think a lot of times it really does come down to landing spot and draft capital. So I
and
think
opportunity cost, right? Like Chig was a 4th, 5th round pick.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Because if
these guys are early
pick, we
seconds,
hate
like
him.
you said. Yep. Right.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So I think once this all kind of shakes out, probably have a handful of these guys who throw them on taxi squads, or if you have deep rosters, you're going to want to take some shots. I think it's a good class, and I will probably be passing on the wide receivers for these tight ends, again, depending on where it's at. 2nd round, maybe 3rd round, definitely 4th round for sure. So, yeah.
Well, and I just wanted to toss this in there because we've talked about RAS a couple times, and this, like you said, especially for tight ends, it's a big deal. I mean, Zach Kuntz in the Underwear Olympics comes out with a 10, like the best RAS for a tight end ever in the model. Like that's as good as you can do. In this class, there are, oh man, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tight ends over 9. Which is impressive. And then you've got another 6 that are over 8. So you've got 16 tight ends in this class that are over an 8. And you know who's not one of those 16? Michael Mayer.
Yeah.
That makes me nervous, right? Like 7.65 RAS, like that. He's on the cusp there, right? And Dalton Kincaid is not in that either because he didn't do any of the things to qualify for an RAS. So even if you put those two in that group, you're looking at 18 tight ends that are, best ever. Like this could be a crazy deep tight end class that, to be honest, in fantasy we need. We've only got like 5 or 6 really good tight ends. If we add another 3 to that list after this season, I'll be happy. It just makes it a little less constricted at the top. But I just think it's interesting with RAS too being kind of what I kind of use to break a tie, and tight ends. That's really important. Like you were saying, that the correlation is huge. But some of these guys, I mean, James Bostic, never heard of him. Went to OU. He's got an 8.07. He could be a 7th round draft pick, undrafted free agent even, and not get drafted in your rookie draft and become a guy. Like we see it happen sometimes at tight end. They're just a stud and ball out and land in the right place. So it makes it tricky. Tight end it's a mess, right? But if we're looking at 18 good, potentially good tight ends in this class, I'm not upset with that. That's a good time.
Yeah. And Ridley Truther says in the comments, one dark horse to be that dude this time next year. And I could give you the homer pick in Luke Schoonmaker. I think he's got the skills to do it. But a guy like even better, Payne Durham from Purdue. I think he's like 35 years old at this point. But he's got probably the best hands in the class. I don't know if he can block, but he's solid. He's all right blocker. It's not like he can't. But Payne Durham is a guy that I'll be watching that scrolling line at the bottom of day 3 to see what team he lands on, because I think that'll be a fun one. He's an awesome dude and a fun player to watch.
Yeah, his RAS is only 6.58 though, so
yeah, he's not going to hit any of the metrics. He's not going to be a name that people know. Just
that's okay.
Random guy that I watched that.
That's a good dark horse.
I said the same thing about David Bell. So what do I know? Don't listen to me.
Andy Isabella, right? There's all these guys.
But, hey, David Bell didn't hit any of the metrics either, right? So we should have listened,
True.
Yeah. Huh. All right. Anything else you guys want to mention on tight ends or any position anywhere? Just kind of finish up the catch-all here.
I think I'm ready, honestly. Like I'm excited for the draft. I want the NFL draft to happen. I want my fantasy drafts to kick off. 2 weeks, baby. I'm ready. I want it now.
Yeah, this is the most excited I've been for fantasy football draft or for the draft relative to fantasy football in a long time, because there's so many names, and I personally think it's a very deep class relatively. It's not got all that elite talent other than Bijan and maybe JSN, depending how you look at them, and the quarterbacks. But I do think mid-wise, it's a very deep class. So I love the 2nd round of rookie drafts and the 3rd round and 4th rounds. There's going to be values all over the place. A lot of I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a 30-40% hit rate even in round 3 on some of these running backs and wide receivers and stuff.
I'm going to be very curious to see that kind of information after this. Like after we look back on the class, that's going to be entertaining because last year's class felt like it had a lot more busts than hits, right?
Yeah,
that happens sometimes. Yeah. But yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Well, with that, I think 2 weeks from now, it's going to be a hell of a weekend. I'm stoked. Got it lined up today, was out with the guys, and probably got 10 guys at my house. Got my projector set up. You can see the bunker behind me here, which I think Puff Pass Kick said, am I in a safe room? This is
worried about you.
This is my new office setup down here in the basement. So still working on that, but stoked for that. Let's get into our Find Me a Trade and get on out of here for the night. So Andrew, you want to do settings or you want to do roster?
Well, before we do that,
Find me a trade.
Got to play that for our buddy Hart. I'll do settings if you want to pull up the roster.
I got it. Let's do it.
So this one is submitted by our friends at the Fantasy Timeline at Fantasy Timeline on Twitter. They're in our Junkies 2 league, which is always a good time. This one is a safe leagues league. So it's, again, something that Scott is very familiar with. It's a 12-team PPR 2.0 tight end premium. Passing touchdowns are 6 and interceptions are -4. It's a start 10, 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 3 receiver. 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 3 receiver, a tight end, and then a super flex still at least or something, right?
Yeah,
because it's 1. Yeah, we still have two flex and a super flex. Yeah,
there you go.
And then they've got draft picks 204 and 404, and I looked at that actually too because I was curious. And their thoughts are very simple, very straightforward, very much a Josh thought. I think this is a middle of the road team at best. Well said, Josh.
Thanks
I love
for that.
It. So
deep ponderings.
That's basically where we're at with this. And so if you want to pull that team up, Scott, we can take a look.
I've got it. You can add it.
Perfect. Okay.
There we go. Okay, at quarterback, we've got Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, and Taylor Heineke. Matt Ryan, we'll see if he comes back around. Running back, Gus Edwards, Nyheim Hines, Kareem Hunt, Jamal Williams, Javonte Williams. Wide receiver, Deontay Johnson, DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, and a bunch of non-threshold receivers there. And at tight end, Dallas Goedert, Austin Hooper, and Brevin Jordan rounds out the Safe League's 28-man roster. Okay, Andrew, let's have you start with your trade.
Yeah. Do you want me to start since I actually had one on the sheet?
Since you put it on the sheet, we're going to start there.
Love it. All right. So I feel kind of bad doing this because I like this team. It is. I could see why you think it's middle of the road. I get it. But my trade is, I feel like it's a little bit too in-house because I just traded Lamar. I wrote an article for Fantasy Pros, came out last week where I said Lamar Jackson is somebody I'm trying to get rid of. And I just submitted a new article where he was listed as a trade target. Like it depends. Honestly, it's just all about the price. So my thinking here is if you can get rid of Lamar and bolster some of your other roster spots, maybe that would help. So mine was with New Killer America, which is a terrific team name. You would send Lamar for Travis Etienne, Michael Pittman, and the 209. And we just got done listing a bunch of players that we think are going to be valuable in this draft that could go in the second round. I think any one of those flyers is nice at the 209. If you can get more than that, great. But I'd be fine to settle for something in that second round. The New Killer America team has a ton of draft picks. They are, in my mind, looking at a rebuild and have a ton of different things, ton of different places they can go. They can pivot all over the place. So I like this one because it gives you ETN and Pittman, which both pretty much immediately make your starting roster. I think that you're probably starting both of them every week. It does trade away Lamar without getting one back, but you've got Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, and potentially Matt Ryan to be starters still. Teddy Bridgewater might start a game or two. Heineke might start a game or two. I don't mind just rolling with 2 in this league in this theory either and kind of getting out on Lamar before we see him get worse, I guess, or value go down or who knows. So that was kind of my thinking. Scott, what do you think about that trade? Lamar for ETN, Pittman, and the 209?
Yeah, I mean, you know what I'm gonna say about sending away a quarterback and not getting one back.
Not a good idea, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's philosophy more than anything, right? But yeah, value wise, you're gonna get 3 more pieces there. Do you have enough flex spots that Pittman's going to be a starter? It might be close with
Well, I'm
the
thinking if
receivers
Javonte doesn't
that you
start
have,
the
but
season, right?
yeah, but you're going to need ETN for Javonte. That's exactly right. So I mean, from that standpoint, you're going to be able to have some flexibility. I think so are you going the other way here that you're saying, hey, I'm going to just roll with like Rodgers and Love and try to, because I don't know that that's enough to necessarily compete, but this trade isn't like a retooling trade, right?
So my thinking with this trade is it's one of many I would try to make, right? I would first try to move from Lamar and try to add some assets. And then I might do even something crazy where I take Pittman and Rodgers and move up to get a Dak or something like that, right? And I think that there's this team is probably, and we say this a lot, this team is probably 4 or 5 good trades away from contending, but I don't think it's out of reach. I think that there's a lot of good trades you can make. And I'm just looking at, we talk about it all the time, right? Timing is everything. Like the timing right now, Lamar is the guy that I'm trying to move. There's some risk there. I don't think you're going to get a lot for Aaron Rodgers. I'd be fine to move Aaron Rodgers too, but I just don't think you get a lot. I want to break something up and then combine those together to move to a different place. That's kind of where my head goes. Like, I don't think it needs to be a torn down to the studs rebuild, but I like retooling, moving off Lamar, getting some other assets that could be, potentially rising assets. And even with that 209, and then after the draft, and we see how things settle off in, late May, early June, start to make some more moves. Rodgers will have signed by then. That trade will have been done. Like maybe that's when you bump that and you say, hey, Rodgers just signed. Now we move Rodgers, right? There's no reason to move Rodgers today. Nothing's changed. And I think you could even make that same argument for Lamar. Like nothing's changed. Why are we moving him? It all depends on the price. If they're not willing to pay that price, then don't move it, right? That's ultimately what it comes down to. I'm trying to get full value, or if not even pay a tax for sending Lamar without getting a quarterback back. That's kind of where my head goes. If you can get full value, that's where I'd start. But again, I don't think there's a bad trade to be made here. You've got a lot of good receivers, and maybe that's where you start. But I don't know, Scott, I see you kind of building your trade on the sheet. What was the trade you wanted to get into? It was similar to that, maybe?
Yeah, so I think this is one of those where it might have to wait a little bit because it's going to revolve around. I want to, if we're middle of the road, like we're not at the time of year where we can just break everything down right now. Like you already have too many teams ahead of you. They already have the draft capital. You're not going to be getting that draft capital most likely. So we're not really in a spot where we want to trade for vets, and we're not going to be able to really break the whole thing down here. So I want to maybe look ahead to the future where, the Rodgers trade goes through. We start getting some videos of Javonte Williams running around and, I don't know, just running on grass and like, hey, he's alive and he runs the ball and he's here. Because just things like that are going to bring value back to some of these players. And so again, this trade might have to wait a little bit, but what I want to do is position myself. We're not really leaving the middle of the road, but we're going to put ourselves in position for maybe some value gain, and or just a place to pivot depending on what happens in season, right? Because you don't know, you might lose 3 starters in the first 3 weeks and you're like, okay, we got to head towards rebuild, right? Yeah. But then everybody knows that and you're not going to get anything for some of these guys. So I was kind of looking at the same team you did a trade with, New Killer America. I was trying to find a way to maybe get them a quarterback or try to get some picks. But again, this time of year, it's just really not going to be conducive to that. So what I came up with was a trade with the team Run the Damn Ball. And he has Josh Allen and Tua along with Zach Wilson. So looking at his roster, he probably thinks, or, he's more than middle of the road, right? It's probably more contender anytime you have Josh Allen. But Tua, obviously, don't know what's going to happen there. A little bit of risk. So that might be a type of team you could send Rodgers to. That's like, hey, yeah, give me that solid vet that I know he's locked in for this year. Let's make that championship run. So that deal is Aaron Rodgers. I got too many screens going on here. Moving Aaron Rodgers and Javonte Williams for DeAndre Swift. I just clicked off the wrong screen here. DeAndre Swift. And I'm looking at the wrong team. No, I got it. Yeah, okay. DeAndre Swift and Jerry Jeudy. And the two, I forget what their pick was. I can find that real quick. The 205. The 205. There it is. Yeah. Javonte to Swift, to me, I think somebody would be willing to make that upgrade. You know, it might seem, well, I don't know. I guess it might not seem like an upgrade. But obviously Javonte is a little younger. Maybe he has more upside at this point. I think people are kind of out on Swift. So that's where I'm willing to maybe add him in. Again, he might not do anything for you this year. Maybe he signs with the new team next year. Javonte, we don't really know, but it could help that team towards the end of the season. Taking a risk on a guy like Jeudy and then adding a mid-second where you can potentially add one of these tight ends we've talked about, being a heavy 2.0 tight end premium in this league, or another running back that you can use to either, make a run or, flip him for another piece there. So just trying to maneuver to a pivot point of which you could go either way very easily at some point in the season.
When I'll just jump in here and let David go in a second. We've been kind of leaving him out. You're still there, David. I know. But this is a very similar trade to mine where it's like, getting a couple different ascending assets. I think Swift and Jeudy both are going to see better days this year than they saw last year. I think Javonte's still got a lot of name value, and I think that offense is going to do well. I like Javonte a lot in Dynasty. I think he's still got a lot of, meat left on the bone, I guess you could call it, since he tore his ACL. But in the 205, same logic, like just getting another flyer pick is always a good idea in any of these trades if you can pull that off. And it's the same logic too, sending a quarterback without getting one back, right? So I feel like anytime I do that, I want a little heavier on the other side. So I don't mind this trade at all. But David, we will pivot to you. What do you think about either of these trades? What would you do these kind of trades? Is this kind of where your brain goes, or do you have a different idea entirely?
Yeah, it's funny. So I didn't see your trade initially in the sheet, and I just was going through as we went to the show to find one, and I found the same exact team and the similar concept in there.
Love it.
Whereas I'm trying to trade away some of those quarterbacks. Jordan Love's my sell target that I think as a starter, I think he carries the most value right now. But to Scott's point, it's probably better to wait on Rodgers for when he officially signs. He's going to get a nice boost right away. And I think that's the time to pivot off him. And you should. I don't think he's doing anything for your team right now. I'm not sure that the return value, the guy would accept it for the Swift Jeudy one. I guess I thought that was a lot to get in return.
I don't like Jeudy as much, so I think that's where that gets affected. I think people are much higher on Jeudy than I am. So, but I still see value in him, close. Obviously.
Yeah, DTC had it close. That's all I'm looking at. Like you're within 5 to 10%. You're good.
Okay. All right.
Nice. Okay. So yeah, I didn't know that, but that's interesting. But yeah, I would target. Let's see here. It was Killer America. And I'm looking to sell Love and possibly another quarterback. He's so thin there. He doesn't even have a starter right now. And what I was aiming for was Singletary, Fournette, and a second-round pick on what that costs. Because we just talked about how much we love the rookie running back class and how you want as many darts as you can. If you already got the 204, if you can add another mid-range second in there, you're going to get a decent running back, and you're going to have two of them. Fournette's at an all-time low value. I don't have no idea how much he's got left in the tank, right? And how many, if even a year, he has
free
left.
Piece,
but,
basically.
Yeah, this guy should be, have no problem letting him go. Singletary, I mean, we mentioned him earlier in the show, actually. I think he carries some decent, floor for his receiving, and then it's just taking a flyer on those rookie picks. I don't think you're gaining anything at all by holding on Love and Rodgers on your bench here with a Lamar there. I like Lamar a lot. He's been a trade target of mine. But yeah, I see the cases with him. There's a lot of concerning issues. And if he trades teams, like his value might plummet hard because they built that team for him. And not a lot of teams do that. And it's pretty amazing to see. But they're already pivoting another direction, right? They got Monken, the heavy passing mind. They brought in OBJ, the high paid receiver, which they've never done in all the years with Lamar. They're finally doing it at I don't know if it's leverage or what, but it seems like there's definitely a philosophy change in the Ravens organization. And if Lamar's there for it, I think he's going to explode. But I don't know what's going to happen with him. I'm a big Lamar fan, though. I'm rooting for him. So, yeah, we're all on the same page. Though, ship some quarterbacks for some running backs or other pieces, and that makes sense.
I just want to add this in too. New Killer America, the team that we're talking about, has 5 first-round picks and 4 second-round picks. So
there
he's
you
got
go.
the 103, 4, 108, 109, 111. He's got a bunch of options, and I think that's someone I'd be targeting in the consolidation on his side type of trade. Yeah, I'd be like, hey, you're going to need to consolidate your roster. Let me send you 1 player for 3, like we're both kind of talking about in our trade builds here. That's the perfect target for that, because as you get into rookie season, those teams that have a bunch of rookie picks, maybe they plan on drafting with all of them, but they shouldn't, right? And we talked about this with Scott Connor, and we talk about it all the time. You don't have to draft just because you have these picks. They're good trade chips. And this team, I feel like the Timeline team could use a couple bench pieces or, even starters to really get over that hump. So this is the perfect kind of trade to send Love for 3 pieces, or any one of those QBs for 3 pieces. Get yourself an extra second, bolster your other rooms. I don't hate any of this. I like that we're all kind of on the same page, though. It always makes me feel good.
And all trading quarterbacks away, which is pretty rare in Superflex, right? But
without
I think
getting
this
one
is
back,
the right roster to do it. Yeah.
There you go. Hopefully that helps Josh and Drew.
Good stuff. Good luck, guys. Awesome. Yeah. Well, hell of a night. Always awesome having David on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, you guys.
Amazing stuff.
Good chatting.
Appreciate you. Appreciate your model, your approach, everything. I'm always, obviously he knows I'm always in his DMs like, yo, what do you think about this guy? Yo, what about this guy? Like,
I love chatting players.
Do you have anything better to do than bother me? But yeah, no, I really don't. I really don't. So that's gonna still be coming here soon, and especially once we get some draft capital in, I'll be very, very curious to see how it affects some people. So
for sure,
we will be chatting.
No, I love it. I don't get to talk football with much people in my real life. My wife and 2 daughters aren't too keen into it, so that's all I spend my time with. So
they just think you're an accountant dealing with spreadsheets. You don't watch football,
right.
So they don't even. Yeah, they don't have a clue. That's perfect.
That's what it's all about. All right. Well, as we sign off here, David, why don't you tell the people again where they can find you and your work?
Yeah, I'm at DavidZock16 on Twitter, writing with fantasy pros and nerds a little bit. My articles have really waned off lately, but doing a lot of stuff on Twitter, and I got a full guide I might release this offseason, as well as trickling out some info, and of course the Z-score coming out in about 3 weeks, so you can look forward to that.
Can't wait. Love it, man. Appreciate you giving us the time. Little bit of biz here. Keep those FMAT submissions coming in. We got a whole bunch last week, so that was awesome. We've got a bunch to work through there. Got some good stuff coming up on the schedule. We'll do some pre-draft mock, post-draft mock. We're gonna have all that sort of fun. We do have a DAP Network draft show. Correct, right. Andrew? Yep. Okay.
Yep. Night 1, Thursday at least, maybe night 2. We'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. I will not be there. It is literally the night that I live for in my entire life, and I've done that with my best friends for as long as I can remember. So I will not be on the show, which is probably good for the listeners because, like I said, I just tell you to draft David Bell, and that's not going to help anybody. So, thanks to everybody in the chat. We appreciate you guys hanging out. Check us out on Twitter at Dynasty Junkies, Rocky at Dynasty FF Addict. I'm at Scott_Sidlow, at Andrew Hall FF. Subscribe, rate, and review. We appreciate that. Hey, check out all of our shows. Everybody's been kind of jumping on each other's over the past month. It's been a lot of fun doing some, cross reference there and getting some good info. So check those out in the DAP Network. Andrew, I'm going to give you the honors to take us out, man.
Oh, yeah. Thanks so much for coming on, David. It was a great time. Really truther. We had Puff Pass Kick. Like you said, lots of great guys in the chat. But as always, just go have fun with this. This hobby is meant to be a good time. Just go have a good time. And if you're not having a good time, that's okay too. Take a break. We're all here. It's the long off season. Take 2 weeks off and come back healthy. But with that, Junkies out.